4, 3, 2, 1. I told you before to be careful where you put your legs.
I was only trying to be helpful.
I can help myself. What are you waiting for? Come on. Come on. What are you waiting for? Come on. Come on.
For 7 decades, Michael Caine has been among the world's most renowned and recognisable actors.
It was just what I needed. A 1-inch god with a 2-inch penis.
The star of classics like Zulu, The Man Who Would Be King, and The Cider House Rules.
It's a miracle no one was killed.
But also films that brought his career to the brink of complete implosion.
I made a mistake.
Somehow, he has always found a way back.
You're a big man, but you're in bad shape. With me, it's a full-time job.
In this epic podcast series, we will watch and review every Michael Caine movie, from the greatest hits...
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off!
...to the incredible misses.
You failed to maintain your weapon, son.
And take a deep dive into the life and work of one of the world's most recognisable film stars.
His name is Michael Caine, and no one will forget his name.
Behave yourself.
To understand how he has made the mark of Caine.
Well, you all settled in? Right, we can begin. For God's sake, come in!
Hello and welcome to the Mark of Caine, the journey through the mighty filmography of Michael Caine, where we will visit every movie, up the peaks, down the valleys, and charting maybe the most wildly diverse, and I mean wildly diverse, movie career of any actor alive right now. Joining me on this trek, as always, is Stephen Black, chief monkey typist at the Mallow News. Congrats on the promotion.
Thanks very much. That's only because the other monkey died of Ebola.
I just had to put a dampener on the whole thing from the start. I was trying to say something nice, and you bring Ebola into it.
Well, he was old as well, so, you know.
Yeah, let's just say he was old. Anyway, you can find Stephen at Mallow News, and he was like the Prince Philip of the Mallow News staffers. You're just hanging around waiting for your chance. You're just kind of going, he can't possibly be alive. But no, there he is, breathing in and out, hanging in there by his little monkey fingernails. Well, to be fair, some of the tweets recently have kind of read a little bit like possibly a monkey that needed poking with a stick might have written them. So, you know, at least maybe your promotion would bring things up a level now.
I think that's unlikely.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Stephen has left his very busy tweety schedule to watch our latest movie. It's more Harry Palmer, and this time he's at the wall. This is Funeral in Berlin.
He's running for his life. Hold it, Harry Palmer. Remember him in the impress file? Now Harry's in Berlin, with the wall between him and his next perilous assignment. Harry's arranging a funeral in Berlin. He just hopes it won't be his.
Funeral in Berlin is the second effort by Caine as Harry Palmer. The year is 1966, and he's in the middle, isn't he, of this like mad run of films. Like he's done this is the fourth film in 1966 that Caine brings out, isn't it?
Oh, he's blasting them out. He's grabbing opportunity by both hands, and he's basically like Paul Mescal, the Paul Mescal of his day. It's just like, right, how can I milk this teat before it runs dry? Before I end up co-hosting Ireland's Fittest Family, or being one of the guests that Tommy Tiernan gazes at for about 10 minutes trying to figure out who the fuck that is.
Oh, you know? Dear. Well, no, as always, as we say always, if you haven't seen Funeral in Berlin in this case, go watch it online. You'll find it, no problem. It's out there. And if you haven't watched it, well, you know, you can listen on and see what you think. I'd say at the very top anyway, I thought it was, you know, I was actually pleasantly surprised how good it was. But look, we can get into all that in more detail. You liked it as well, did you?
I did like it very much, yeah. Overall, no, I thought it was a good film, and especially coming off the back of Alfie, which, you know, ardent listeners would have listened to before this. It was nice to get away from the casual misogyny and abortion plot.
Yeah,
into something a little bit more, you know, mainstream. Yeah, a bit more mainstream misogyny.
Yeah, mainstream misogyny. That's exactly it. And I mean, we can go into this in a bit more detail. about how different Harry Palmer is in this one, I think, anyway, compared to Ipcris in that regard. Like Harry Palmer in the Ipcris file, of course, if people listened to us talking about that one, like it was kind of an attempt at a 60s metrosexual male to some degree. There's none of that in this. But we'll come to that in a second. To go through the very basics, 1966, it's come out at Christmas time. In the States, it comes out in the early spring the following year in the UK. It's interesting, the New York Times review at the time included the fact that this was like Caine's fourth film. You could go and see Michael Caine in 4 different films in New York that Christmas if you wanted. Alfie, of course, Ipcris File, which was brought out on the back of the popularity of Alfie, Gambit, which we discussed last time round, and this flick, Funeral in Berlin. It's directed by Guy Hamilton, Stephen, who, of course, is a Bond pioneer, wasn't he?
Director of Goldfinger, and will go on to direct the greatest Bond film of all time, Live and Let Die.
Be still, my beating pulse.
Yeah, a terrible director, to be fair, but not terrible. Terrible is a bit harsh, but he's really working. Like he
did Dr. No, he did Goldfinger.
Yes,
all right.
Those are films that were successful. There is nothing dynamic. You remember that classic shot from Goldfinger or that classic shot from Dr. No? He was the. Do you
remember that classic shot from Dr. No? Ursula Andress coming out of the water. I mean, quite apart from Ursula Andress, that's a classic shot. You can't say that's not a classic shot. Goldfinger.
It is, but it's in the context of the film. It's not in the context of the skill of the director of photography. It's not. It's just, this is, here comes your one in a bikini coming out of the water. Maybe Sean Connery is going to do a sex on her.
All right. Fair enough. Maybe we can leave that for our marathon James Bond. This would be like kind of doing, one marathon every single day. When we run out of these 80 odd films of Michael Caine, we can move on to Bond, and you can beat down on Guy Hamilton as much as you like. I didn't think they were that bad. I think they're pretty pioneering pieces of work, but.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing against Guy. I'm sure he's a lovely man, and if I ran into him at a party, I'm sure we'd have plenty to discuss. Cocktail party. It's a lovely guy. Lovely anecdotes about his time in military intelligence during the Second World War. Maybe I'd say some bawdy stories about Roger Moore from the set of Live and Let Die, and Moonraker. Let's not forget that he directed Moonraker as well.
Okay. I get the message. I think you might be onto something there. All right. To be fair, though, when it comes to Funeral in Berlin, of course, Harry Palmer, it's all espionage. Guy Hamilton was an intelligence agent. He actually brought a lot to it beyond being a director. He really did, actually, in practice.
Yeah, apparently so. Michael Caine said that they improvised various bits and pieces based on Guy's experience. I'm assuming most of those were in and around the transvestite bar that they go to about halfway through the film.
You reckon that's where his expertise came rightly to the fore?
Well, I presume it was kind of, that one of the key tools in any spy's utility belt is the ability to dress convincingly as a woman, as the British love doing, both in comedies and in real life spying.
Indeed.
Yeah, so it's many's the investigative journey he made to a bar to do his due diligence.
Well, he certainly brought a lot to it in that regard. As I was saying, the New York Times, when they were talking about Caine at Christmas time, they were saying he's like a cocktail froster and the electric toothbrush, gift wrapped disorderly, which is kind of mad in the space of a year.
What's a cocktail froster?
I have no idea. I presume it's something that Don Draper would have had. I have no. Would it put kind of like, a little frosty rim on top of a cocktail glass? So I don't know. I'm not really a cocktail person, I'll be honest. I may have had a cocktail at one point in my life, but I don't think I realized I was having one.
No, usually about the time you're drinking cocktails, you definitely weren't in a fit state to remember what it is that you were doing.
No, at that point, I'm shouting my credit card number around the bar, and I'm waking up, or at least, certainly the following month, my bill is coming back, and I'm realizing that at some point in the previous month, I was shouting my credit card number around the bar.
Yeah.
So we'll get into this. Okay, one of the things we sometimes do on this is we go through the plot of a movie. Now, we will give that a go. And again, I go back to our friends at the New York Times. When this movie came out, it wasn't exactly what you'd call well received, right? It was. Now we both think it's a fucking bloody good movie, but at the time, maybe people were kind of, I don't know, caned out of it, or maybe he was just Alfie. I don't know, but they called it plotsy, which I thought was a bit of a glib remark for this movie. But to be fair, when it comes to trying to explain it for a podcast, it's freaking plotsy, isn't it? It's
a pain in the hoop.
It's unreal. It's very complicated. But we'll give it a rattle, right? So essentially, what we're talking about here is Harry Palmer. It's the second, as I say, it's the second one of Harry Palmer coming back. But he's a very different Harry Palmer. And you see this from the very beginning. Like, I mean, in the previous Ipcris file, you have Harry cooking. You have Harry in a kitchen with designer pots and teapots and designer everything. He's got a lovely coffee pot, as we talked about before. It's all very this, that, and the other. He's a gourmand. In this film, the first time you see Harry Palmer, you see Hans chopping food in the same way you did in the first one. You assume it's Harry, but of course it pulls back. It's not. It's a lady friend, and it's the morning after. This is I think anyway, it's a very different sort of Harry Palmer.
Well, I guess so, but I suppose just to put it in context, in the first movie, all of his kind of cookery chicanery is part of his it's his foreplay. It's how he gets his foot in the sex door. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is post-coital, so this letting her cook is his equivalent of turning around and letting her lie in the wet patch, essentially. Like, you know,
he has no interest in making this woman breakfast. There is no benefit to making breakfast. No benefit to getting out the fancy spoons for this one. No. Nothing at all.
Sort yourself out if I've got to go to work. Essentially, is the vibe here,
and that actually brings on before we even bother getting into the plot, because this was a recurring theme, and it's one that interests me, and I want you to talk to me about this, because this was your theory, in fairness. Early doors, even with Zulu, right? And people who've listened to the previous episodes will be aware of this. We talked about it through Ipcris as well. But this is the de-gayification of Michael Caine at this point in his career. Can you just explain very briefly what we mean by that? Like, how was Michael Caine seen back then? And why did the de-gayification process have to occur in some of these movies in the same way that it occurs in Funeral Berlin as well?
Well, I suppose it's important to remember that these were different times. So it was very important for male stars to be very masculine and not any way give a hint of vulnerability or show any emotion. So the initial feedback that Michael Caine got in his career was that he... viewers thought that he was gay, essentially because he was effete looking, and his mannerisms and his hand gestures were basically homosexual, because homosexuals are, of course, infamous for their hand gestures. All straight men walk with their hands tied to their side, not daring to lift even their baby finger, in case all of a sudden they are basically seconds later in a hedge, blamming away.
Exactly.
Because moving your finger is a gateway drug, essentially, to homosexuality.
And preferably any straight man also would walk with fists clenched in case a potentially homosexual man came near you, so that you could punch him immediately.
Punch him, but also in case an engorged penis made its way through your hand, and you had to basically, in a forward and back motion, try to extricate your clenched fist from sitting orange penis.
It's just a tragedy waiting to happen.
It was a lot tougher time, for straight men especially, because obviously it was easy for homosexuals back then. Anyway, so essentially they attempted to rehabilitate his heterosexuality in films by putting him in scenarios that would leave the viewer in no doubt that here was a man who likes his coffee black, he's toast burnt, and he's women without penises. Yeah, so like in the Ipcris file, again, if you go back to the podcast, there are numerous very blatant efforts to leave the viewer in no doubt that he's a straight man. It's carried over into this a little bit at the start, just leaving you no doubt. Obviously, here he is. Nothing's happened between film 1 and film 2 to make him doubt that he likes ladies. So here we are.
No.
Yeah. And you know, he's throwing out the odd misogynist line, like telling his lover that she'd be better off getting back into the bedroom and out of the kitchen.
Will you cooperate? Information?
Yes.
I'll tell them that you talk well and lie badly.
Harry Palmer's back and in dead trouble again. Horn rims, cockney wit, iron fist.
Where's Bulk? He's going over the wall.
He's a peaceful kind of guy, really. He just likes a little peace and quiet.
Tell Ross I'll be late. You're useless in the kitchen. Why don't you go back to bed?
Going back to his relationship with Sam Steele, however, it's a little bit different because he essentially cops on that, hang on, a woman this good looking is not... It just doesn't happen for Harry Palmer. I have to go through this. This is well established. I have to work with them for a short period of time so they get to know my, know what a charming man I am. I have to take them to the flat. I have to cook them a 5-course dinner. Then left too bloated to put up any kind of defense to my amorous moves. Then and only then will I be able to make love to them. Yes. Whereas in this instance, it's basically how are you? Back to my place. Get your pants off the coat.
And I'll make you dinner, in fact. Which is what happens when she goes back. She makes dinner, which just really raises his suspicions about her actual intent. And of course, Sam Steele turns out to be a Mossad agent in this complex and tangled web that begins to knot itself up about a third of the way through the movie. But to go back to the beginning, anyway, just as you say, Stephen, you're quite right. We've delayed this plotsy bit too long. We need to try now. Basically, Harry is sent to Berlin, and of course it's West and East Berlin, it's 1966, to arrange the defection of Colonel Stock, who's a Soviet intelligence guy. He's basically the boss of the wall on the eastern side. So Caine, Palmer, is automatic. He's just skeptical. He meets him, he likes him, but he's skeptical. He meets up with Johnny Vulcan, who's this former criminal associate of Palmer, who is now running the Berlin station for British intelligence. There you go. We'll find out why later on. He meets Stock. He's a bit suspicious of him. And then, as Stephen was just talking about, he meets Sam Steele. Now, at this point, Harry has introduced himself as a lingerie salesman. She introduces herself as a lingerie model, effectively pulls her jacket open in the back of a cab on the way back to her place to show him her latest wares, as it were, and they end up spending the night, etc.
Yeah, he was a lingerie salesman. She was a lingerie model. Can I make it any more obvious?
Yes. I mean, even for Caine, and to be fair, I think this is an example of Caine now. I mean, he down through his career, he has always made reference to the fact that, he is able to inhabit characters. In this case, at this point in the mid-60s, he's, as we discussed in the previous podcast about Gambit, he's having a whale of a time. I mean, no door is left closed to him, as it were. But in this case, he had to inhabit the character of a man who is doubtful about a woman who has literally and physically thrown herself at him. Impressive.
Very impressive. And I mean, again, you wouldn't see Bond doing it. You wouldn't see Bond kind of going, oh, this is quite unusual for me to, sleep with 3 women within a 24-hour period. Maybe I should go take clinic. This is a man who knows. This is a man who knows. Hang on. These things don't happen to me. Clearly something is up. As soon as in fairness to him, he doesn't at any stage say, no, sorry, something's amiss here. Clearly, from a professional perspective, we can't get involved like this. I'll just do a quick background check on you, and if you turn out to be clean, not like that, I'll come back and maybe we can, pick things up from where they left off.
Yeah, exactly. But no, we just drive on. But he's skeptical, so we move along.
There's a lot of this. There's a lot of skepticism, but he never actually followed. So I'm very skeptical.
So the deal is done to get Stock over, but the one thing that Stock wants to happen is he wants this guy Otto Kreutzmann to bring him across. Now Otto Kreutzmann, as we found out earlier in the film, is this guy who's arranging all these fantastic defections. So
he's basically a neo-Nazi with a couple of Aryan henchmen who is, I would assume, is part of the rat line that would have been used to get Nazis out of Germany across the border and into Southern America. Yeah. So they set up this network there just as a money earner to help people defect from East Berlin to West Berlin. and he's making our Russian general, the Russian or stock, look bad.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the premise for getting him involved, because he wants the man who's made him look bad to be involved and helping him defect or escape from East Berlin.
Exactly, and of course, we should pause it. Kreutzmann, of course, is, as you say, a neo-Nazi looking guy, but he's also Slugworth from Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. So, I don't know, is there any connection there?
Well, I suppose when you think about it, I mean, given the time that Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory, or Charlie and the Chocolate, is it Willy Wonka Chocolate Factory?
Charlie? Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is the book, isn't it?
Yeah. So, given that this was set around the same time, Slugworth worked for Wonka, had a lot of slave labor. Charlie Bucket was a blonde, blue-eyed youth. I mean, it's clear that this was just an Aryan recruitment campaign for a fourth chocolatey Reich.
You're making. I think we're about 2 steps away from connecting now on to the boys from Brazil. I think in this little kind of join the dots bit, are we?
I think so. Yeah.
Gregory Peck calling in.
So it's just that deleted scene where Gregory Peck tries to defend himself against those Dobermans with a Wonka bar.
Here, fetch. No, it didn't quite work. So he goes back to London, tells Ross he's a bit skeptical about the whole thing. Ross says, fire ahead. And at this point, he meets this guy, Hallam, who gives him documents to take back to Berlin to affect what is going to be, by the way, a fake funeral. That's how they're bringing stock across. They're going to stick him in a coffin and bring him over, but of course they need documents. So he gives him documents. But this guy, Hallam, again...
Yeah, so Hallam is set up as this kind of counterpoint to Harry Palmer in terms of letting the audience know this is what a homosexual man looks like, wears a kimono, is very high in the Hello Ducky scale of 7 or 8, the kind of very, very, very camp, slightly predatory forger who's appears initially in the film. You don't think about him, then when he reappears, you're going to think, oh, this is a more important character, and then becomes very clear that he's up to no good.
Relentless offers of tea, as I remember in The Flash. So he gives them the documents, and they're in the name of a guy called Paul Louis Broom. Oh, we're bringing him over by funeral. He goes back to Berlin. He meets Samantha, who he's apparently falling in love with.
Well, as you do, I suppose this is the 50s and 60s, and most people, our generation, will know your parents met, they fell in love, and then they had sex, and then they had you, and that was it for the rest of their lives. So in the same way, the movies reflected this. Basically, you met somebody, if they would have sex with you, that meant that you were in love, and you would have a family.
Exactly. And this is the road that Harry, bizarrely, is taking. So... But also, in the middle of all of this, of course, she admits that she's Mossad. She's in Berlin to actually find Broom, who's a war criminal. He was a Nazi concentration camp guard who nicked over 2 million quid and put it in a Swiss bank. So that's why they're there. So suddenly Harry goes, Paul Louis Broom, that name rings a bell with me.
And of course, Swiss bank. What Switzerland also famous for?
Toblerone.
Chocolate, exactly. Bring us all the way back to Willy Wonka.
Wonka. You're right. I think you're onto something here.
Signs are everywhere if you look for them.
They are. I'll keep an eye on that. I think you're trying to single-handedly ruin the movie for me, eh?
Don't worry, we'll be putting a link to my Willy Wonka Aryan conspiracy theory on Facebook into the description of this podcast.
Wonkanon. There we go. We got there. So anyway, Kreutzmann goes over to the east, sorts out the funeral. Coffin comes back. Harry is there with Kreutzmann's henchmen to open the coffin. When they open it, shock horror, who's there? Kreutzmann. Harry realizes he's been done. Next thing, he's whacked on the back of the head in that 60s way where you just get hit in the back of the head and straight away you're out. But of course, again, in 60s style, he just woke up again at just the right time in terms of the plot and everything. It's amazing how that always happens in those flicks. But anyway, just
very quickly, as we kind of schedule for a movie called Funeral in Berlin, I was expecting more funeral.
Yeah, the funeral is essentially walking a coffin across a bridge.
That's pretty much it. They're going from West Berlin into East Berlin, and it's as far as funerals go, it's pretty.
Yeah, there was no wake.
There's no sandwiches.
No. It's distinct lack of booze.
No interminable line of, "Oh, sorry for your trouble.
Sorry for your trouble there. Sorry for trouble." Yeah. No, there was none of that. And funny enough, actually, in kind of keeping with this version of Harry Palmer, the same way in the first installment, to distinguish itself from Bond, as we talked about before about Ipcris, there was a lot of paperwork and stuff like that. There's no paperwork here. Like it's straight down the line. Harry is ahead of the game the whole time, isn't he? In this, as opposed to the last time when he was kind of not really.
He's ahead of the game, but he's ahead of the game, but he gets knocked unconscious by the lad standing behind him. So he's not. He's aware of the game. I wouldn't say he's ahead of it. He's ahead of the game in terms of making sure that he has a forged copy of the Broom documents that he could plant as well, which I suppose leads us on to the rest of the plot.
Exactly. I'm going to come on to that in about, I would say, 30 seconds time. So basically, we are now okay. So Harry's knocked out. Mossad, of course, rock up. Samantha and the lads are there. They take the documents off Johnny Vulcan, who's knocked him out. People are, of course, we're watching going, Johnny Vulcan, he's mate.
How could you, Johnny Vulcan?
What's going on? So that's fine. That all happens. Then Ross, his boss back in London, tells Palmer that Paul Louis Broom was indeed a war criminal who murdered a resistance fighter called Johnny Vulcan. What a great! I mean, I love the name Johnny Vulcan. It seems completely out of place in this movie, but anyway, whatever about that.
Yeah, he sounds like a French pop star from the 60s.
Exactly. He's in the right era, but he's in the wrong movie. Like,
yeah,
you know, it's great. But anyway, so the British have blackmailed Broom into becoming Johnny Vulcan and doing their dirty work, which of course is a little bit similar to Harry, isn't it? Because he got spared a long prison sentence by agreeing to go work for intelligence and do all this kind of crappy stuff that he doesn't really want to do. So anyway, so now the next job is go kill Broom, please. And Harry's scruples don't stretch as far as killing lads he knew 15 years ago.
They don't, but his scruples don't stretch as far as killing a Nazi concentration camp guard, which I think we can both agree on. I don't want to appear too woke, but you know, concentration camp guards, bad guys, bad lads. Yeah. So you would think you could stretch at least one scruple to killing him instead of just saying choking him in under the chin and just going bad Nazi, but off you go.
Off you go, you scamp. Our man is sent over to kill him. He picks up Vulcan. Of course he doesn't. It is like that. It's like he's driving a dog into the woods and he lets him off, basically, isn't it? And Vulcan, of course,
exactly what he gives him a cigarette and then lets him off. Yeah.
So he rocks up back at Sam Steele's flat to rob the documents, gets the documents, kills a Mossad guy. Then he meets, of course, with Hallam, who we've met previously in his flat trying to corner Harry. And when they look at the document, Hallam looks at the documents, he realizes they're forgeries. Realizes Harry swapped them.
Hallam and Broom are in cahoots.
They are in cahoots. And the reason they're in cahoots isn't it that Hallam is going to be fired, basically, and he's a bit annoyed at this.
He's very bad with money. And he sees this as an opportunity to get more money. Although really he's not fixing the root problem, because even if he gets more money, he's still likely to spend it on miniature Buddhas, Ming vases, and a selection of increasingly expensive kimonos. So even if things turned out differently, I'd say Hallam would still end up begging for cigarettes in about 5 years.
So, solution to all this, Hallam, assuming that Harry is still a dope, calls over to his flat saying, I've been sent by Ross to collect the documents. Of course, Harry's way ahead of the game and grabs Hallam in a kind of an arm twisty thing, and your man cracks like a twig under pressure.
Yes, I tell you everything, please, no more pain.
Yes, literally inside of like a second. So anyway, he explains that the two lads were going to defect over to East Berlin and then they were going to make their way to Switzerland, get the 2 million quid, yada, yada, yada. So Harry says, right, I've got a plan. Let's go to the wall. Tonight's the night they're going across. So he takes Hallam with him. They go to the wall where he is meant to meet Paul Louis Broom, Johnny Vulcan. He sends Hallam on ahead to try and lull him into a false sense of security. Vulcan, again, also not a dope, stabs him. So Harry finds him on the stairs. And then basically suddenly you see Mossad are here as well. And then we have this
So Mossad think that Harry is responsible for killing their mate in the apartment, and so they're out for Vulcan/Broom's blood, and also for Harry's blood. So go on.
Yeah. So I mean, but this is one of my favorite. No, this is one of my kind of like, oh my god, bits in the movie. So you've basically got like British intelligence, a Mossad guy, Nazi war camp / British intelligence guy, West Berlin or West German guards and East German guards, all within about 20-30 yards of each other,
and a film crew,
and a film crew, and it's dead silent, and all this is going on. Long story short, we're at the wall. So Hallam is gone, Vulcan is making for it, and I'm just gonna, to be honest, Steve, I'm already plotzied out. So just tell me how it finishes.
Well, picture, if you will, it's midnight.
Quicker.
Broom has Harry at gunpoint. Harry says, "Look, the jig is up. Ross and these men are on their way, and they've been told to keep an eye out for your trademark fur coat." Which, to be fair, you'd imagine spies would be better trained, maybe to look for a man of his exact description rather than for somebody wearing a fur coat in a very cold city. Could be potentially a massacre. So being quite clever, Broom makes Harry swap his trademark coat for his own trademark coat. It's Mossad, of course, who turn up, not MI5 or MI6 or whatever. They go out. Mossad see Vulcan dressed as Harry. Sam Steele, her warm heart turns to, one might say, steel, and shoots. Tells the lads to shoot Harry Palmer, who's actually Broom. Bang, bang, he's dead. They go over. They've been tricked. Harry walks over and says, I can't... He says nothing, but his eyes say, "I can't believe you did me like that, Sam. I thought our love was forever." But more concisely, he says, he says the documents are in his breast pocket, which I guess is the equivalent of "your money's on the nightstand, love."
It's in spy talk.
In spy talk, yeah. And that's effectively the movie. Another more succinct way of putting this entire plot: it's a story of one man's basically application for an £800 car loan that goes awry.
This is true. This is very true. He's not just trying to put a very lame joke together. Go on.
No, essentially, Harry's been looking for £800 to buy a car. That's apparently is pertinent to the plot, because I suppose you'd never see James Bond doing it, because basically they're throwing cars at him like he's a Premier League footballer.
And even in this movie, that works as
an analogy, but
you tried. Look, you get marked for trying. But here, come here, and here's the other. Even on that, like, he doesn't even get the best car in the movie. Johnny Vulcan has the best car, 1959 Cadillac, which just seems to go on for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. But he even has a good car. So, even poor Harry is just scrambling around for the loan.
And even at the end, where Ross is basically saying, "You did a good job despite everything. You can have your car loan." Harry's like, "No, my heart's broken for that girl that I slept with maybe a couple of times, and I love her, but she broke my heart and basically shot me. So no, I don't want the car, and that'll teach you." I don't know what we're supposed to take from that. Is it the equivalent of Clint Eastwood throwing his badge into the river at the end of the first Dirty Harry movie? It's kind of meant to be this very symbolic thing. Yeah, but I mean, he's coming back for the next movie. So what's the third movie? Is it going to be? Is he going to be? You're going to see the first shot is him just driving a very expensive car, going, I've changed my mind, or maybe he's going to be just cycling. He's still trying to prove a point. He's cycling in and out to work.
I think you're cycling it out to work. Yeah. He's taking the tram and bus. I'm not. I'm just disgusted.
He's got one of those.
This whole thing was carried on.
He's got one of those little fold-up bikes that he brings on the tube. Squished in there.
Angry all the time, angry, and people are looking at him and go, "Why is he scowling all the time?" And so you just wouldn't understand.
I'm making a point.
Like a really serious point at work that no one, and I mean no one, is paying any attention to. But I think you've actually hit something there now with the Dirty Harry thing. That it's It's absolutely is what it is. Because what struck me about the ending, and what I really like about the ending, and it's one of the reasons I really like the film, is that, okay, Mossad got what they wanted, which was essentially Paul Louis Broom dead, right? And I presume they'll get the £2 million as well out of it. Ross is happy because Vulcan is dead, and also they can spin it as a guy trying to jump the wall who didn't make it, so he's a martyr. So Hallam is gone, mole, kind of, defector type. The only person who loses out here is Harry. And I mean, this is like he's the anti-hero almost, like, you know what I mean? I mean, nothing, even when he does the job properly, it still doesn't work out for him. And I thought that was really good.
Well, it's a continuation of the theme. It's similar to the Ipcress file. He didn't, it's kind of wouldn't they say it's a very triumphant ending in that film either. So it'd be interesting to see whether or not they maintain this as it goes through the decades, where, let's say, audiences would be less okay with a kind of downbeat ending.
Yeah,
but I guess we'll see over the coming episodes.
That is true.
Another thing just to mark out is that in terms of body count, from if you look at Harry Palmer as being an anti-James Bond, I mean, he kills nobody in this movie. I think he kills one person in the Ipcress file. Yeah,
I think you're right there. And he refuses to kill someone in this film.
Yeah, so, although he does essentially kill. He sends Broom off to his death by making him swap coat, or planting the seed of the idea of swapping coats in his head.
Yes, I mean he's kind of adjacent to death a few times, but he's not doing it like, he's going. You walk over there wearing my jacket. There might be bullets, but you walk over there. It's nothing to do with me. I've got plausible deniability here. Another key item in a spy's tool belt, of course, plausible deniability.
Absolutely.
So, like, it's a really good movie. The one thing we actually didn't touch on, which we probably should just talk about for a minute, is Berlin itself. I mean, at this remove now, 1966, they filmed 95% of the film in Berlin. You could guess for anyone who hasn't seen it, if you go watch the film, you'll be able to guess the scenes that they probably couldn't film in Berlin. But 95% of it was filmed there. It's Caine walking across through Checkpoint Charlie. They filmed in East Berlin as well. It adds hugely to the film, like.
Yeah, if I was a kind of a film critic wanker, I'd say you could say that Berlin is perhaps the lead character in this movie.
It has its own accent almost, doesn't it? In this film.
No, it's I mean, the film in a lot of ways is kind of a historical document in terms of it shows it's a snapshot of a place, a unique place at a unique time in history.
I must have gone to the wall during the time that I was there about 25 times. It's an awful thing, but somehow it's fascinating. You find yourself walking around in a sort of atmosphere of ghosts. It's a sort of white-knuckle city. You're always sitting there with your hands clenched, even when you're ordering breakfast. But you get the feeling of violence at any time.
So, yeah, from that perspective, it's really, like I said, I really enjoyed the movie, more so than, I guess, the other movies that we've seen so far. So it'd be interesting to see whether or not this is a benchmark that, I mean, I'm saying this and I know it's not true, that whether or not this is a benchmark that Caine can maintain throughout the other 517 movie credits that he has.
Well, as we'll probably find out in the very next movie, which we'll talk about in a second. But I mean, this was, yeah, I'd agree with you. I think, and like, as you know, I'm a big Zulu fan, but I think, geez, this is, I mean, just as a piece of work, this is really, really good. Like, I would give it in our marks of Caine out of 10. I would probably, I mean, I don't want to go overboard, but I'd probably give this a very solid 7, heading for an 8. Actually,
yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, really enjoyable film. If I saw it on again, I'd sit down and I'd watch it.
Yeah,
definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, I mean, we'll have loads of opportunities to be glib about Michael Caine films as we go along, but I mean, this is just a really, really good film, and it probably benefits a little bit as well. For example, like for things like, Otto Heller was a cinematographer. In Ipcress File, there's some fantastic things going on with the cinematography, the way it looks. This is a lot more straight down. I think this film is just a lot more straight down the line. Even though it is plotsy, it is very easy to follow it, I think, anyway. And it's a lot
more easy to follow. There's less airy fairy Pink Floydy visuals for
no brainwashing. That's good.
No brainwashing, which is complete and utter horseshit.
Yeah, that was good. Lack of brainwashing, lack of a feeling of being at a Pink Floyd gig. always is an advantage when watching a film, I think.
And in life.
In general, indeed it is. So like, I mean, anything else you want to touch on in this thing? Are we happy with Funeral Berlin right there?
I think we've enough there to leave the lovely people at home hungry for another episode.
Hungry for another episode. Although when you see the film that we're going to be watching for the next episode, in fact, this is one of those ones where maybe you don't want to watch the film. Just come and listen to us talk about it. I think that might be a better thing.
Well, the next movie is 1967's Hurry Sundown.
Yeah, I don't think he can quite fit in another film into 1966. I mean, the man's got to eat and sleep at some stage.
Yeah, I think that another film would have been The Wafer Thin Mint that would have ended up exploding Michael Caine all over the place. So.
Although, to be fair, Hurry Sundown, following on from the marvel of the excellence of Funeral Berlin, I mean, it does kind of explode all over the place, doesn't it, Hurry Sundown, a little bit?
Well, not to kind of lead the listeners in any particular direction. I would just encourage you before you make your mind up about it, if whether or not you want to watch Hurry Sundown, I would very much encourage you to YouTube the trailer and make your own mind up. It's a hell of a film. And it's an interesting follow-up. I think it really speaks to somebody who was just ping-ponging his way through Hollywood. Like a hormonal tennis ball, he said, mixing his metaphors. So, it really, I don't think, I think even Caine in his drunkest moments could ever try convincing you that he had a strategy, anything resembling a strategy other than pay for the house or houses and keep the show on the road.
You'd love to go back and be kind of, what was your thinking here to do this film next? We won't go into it too much, but I mean, suffice to say, he affects a southern accent.
Does he?
He sure does.
He sure does. He does. Yeah, we'll go into. I don't kind of spoil it because we'll be talking about it at length in the next episode. At extreme length. It is worth having a look, because this is what this podcast is going to be like. We're going to be going from like something like Funeral in Berlin into something straight after, to just kind of going, why would you pick something like that to do next after doing that? This is the whole, and this is why we're doing it. This is why we're doing the Caine films, because he has this amazing ability to do great films and then drop down and come back up again with something. So go watch Hurry Sundown. Come back to us. Come back to the next episode. If Caine is one of the reasons why we're doing this, is Caine is the Andy Dufresne of movie actors. He will, without doubt, trawl through 4 football fields of the most dreadful shit and come out at the end triumphant.
Yes, triumphant. Hands aloft towards the light that's been perched behind the camera.
Whether it's Hannah and her sisters or Cider House Rules.
Yes.
Just washing the feces away from his decaying body.
Mm-hmm. Lovely image. It was going so well.
I am a published author,
You are, and at this point, can we encourage listeners to buy up some of those still remaining copies? We don't want to have too many boxes to go in pulp at the end of this year.
No, Greta Thunberg would be very cross.
She would be very cross, and we don't want that to happen. Stephen,
no, I'm not getting another third in the mail. Thank you very much.
Stephen, thank you very much. Did you enjoy it?
I did very much so. Thank you, Michael. You were very gentle.
Thank you very much. Now, next up, Hurry Sundown, hurry back. We'll see you next time around.
What are you waiting for? Come on.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment. Only nice ones, though. Mean comments will make Alfie cry, and no one wants to see that. The Michael Caine podcast is written, researched, and presented by Stephen Black and Michael Foley, and edited by Andrew Foley. Music is composed by Stephen Black. If you'd like to get in touch, you'll find us on Twitter at Mallow News and at Michael Caine 2. And if you enjoyed this episode, you'll find all the rest wherever you get your podcasts. The Mark of Caine is a Mallow News 2 Cubes production. See you next time.